Welcome to Unleash Your Inner Goldilocks, how to get it just right. Thank you so much for joining us on a extra special event to have a conversation about womanhood and motherhood. Sometimes it's hard to separate the two because by virtue of being a woman, you're pulled into scenarios and situations to bring your maternal instincts and your nurturing and your life affirming capabilities to find that right balance to empower and lift up and make every situation better than you found it. And there's nobody who does it better than women because we're wired for it. As a special ode to Mother's Day, for all the women out there who look for ways to get life just right, regardless of circumstances, knowing what maternal instincts are and bringing that to bear to make life not just bearable, but just beautiful. And to have this conversation with me, there's nobody better in this entire world than my dear friend, my co-host of Women Investing in Women, and somebody I truly admire and respect. And Robin, welcome to Unleash Your Inner Goldilocks.
Thank you so much. This is really, really fun, especially the day before Mother's Day, having this just informal conversation on getting it just right. I don't know if there's any mother who gets it just right, but the notion of, being on your show today and actually kind of spontaneously makes it really, really fun. So I have various thoughts about mothers, mothering, Mother's Day, and all of that. So it's great to be here.
Thank you. Thank you, Robin. And you make a good point. There's no such thing as getting it just right because there's no perfection, but making that moment special for all parties involved and making sure that we're being mindful about this and nurturing about this. That is the gift of motherhood, right? No child comes with a rule book, and we end up mothering other people's children because we take them into our heart. So as a mother, having given birth and raised children, right? How does it feel to have Mother's Day knowing that every day is Mother's Day, but one day is set aside to celebrate?
Well, that's very interesting. I personally love Mother's Day. I think it's great to set aside a special day. I think when we set aside a special day, it becomes a special day. Otherwise, every day is just humdrum. And, well, maybe not humdrum, but it's just the same. Like we set aside a day for Christmas. We set aside a day for Passover. We set aside a day for St. Patrick's Day and Valentine's Day. I think it's nice to have a special day. But I will say this, that one of the best talks that I heard in church on Mother's Day, of course, there's always a Mother's Day talk on church. The woman started out with this analogy. And she said, when you hear the word cat, if you had a positive experience with cats, like you little kittens or playing and you just love little kittens and you're just having so much fun, or you had a cat that just would always snuggle up with you. When you hear the word cat, you have just very positive, warm feelings. And on the other hand, if you had a bad experience with a cat, a cat scratched you, or you had this really obnoxious cat, when you hear the word cat, you're going to have these kind of negative feelings. And she then morphed into, when we hear the word mother, if you had a positive experience with your mother, then you will have warm thoughts and warm feelings. If you had a negative experience with your mother, then you're not going to feel that way. And so Mother's Day comes with a lot of baggage. And for some people, perhaps for many people. And in reality, you probably, I would say most people are in the middle, where they had both positive and negative experiences with their mothers. And hopefully the mothers, as we get older, we are making amends to our children. We are making living amends by changing our behavior. But the whole notion of Mother's Day is not only, roses and sunshine for people. And I think it's fair to acknowledge that and kind of take that into our calculations.
That is such a beautiful perspective. I love hearing you say that in such an understandable storytelling form. I come from a culture where there is no Mother's Day, but the feminine energy is the maternal energy. And so I interpret it as us celebrating our feminine energy, all the elements that give us those instincts that allow us to bring that feminine energy into life, whether it's in our families, in our homes, in our communities, in our workplace. And that too is beautiful. That too is beautiful. And I am not somebody who gave birth, but I have a lot of children at different ages. Having been a professor, my students become my children over time, and neighbors' children and other people's children. And for some reason, not some reason, I guess, maternal has been my way of living life. I've raised children even while I was a child, my siblings. So I tend to show up in my maternal energy. And so even for grown people, I actually have an NFL player who's my client who says, "Oh my God, when you talk, I hear my mother. And before she passed away, she told me, I will be back in your life and my spirit will be with you." And he calls me mom. He says, I am his mother's energy. And he's introduced me to all his children. And they say, "Oh my God, she's like grandma." So I am mom to so many people I cross paths with, and it feels natural. It feels good. And so to me, Mother's Day is even another layer, different and yet still beautiful.
You know, I'm really loving that. And that's the one thing that we had chatted about a little bit before the recording started, is that you are the exemplar of mothering and motherhood, even though physically you have not given birth or adopted children, for example. And I think that notion of mothering other children that you have not physically birthed is vital, that we often overlook the value of that. And what's coming to mind is this is many years ago when my oldest daughter was like in high school. There was this thing called the 40 assets. In fact, it became a movement, the 40 assets. And they would do presentations in schools and churches and all that. And they found that there's this list of these 40 assets that children have, that 40 assets that exist. And the more that a child has in their life, the less likely they are to engage in self-destructive behavior, and the more likely they are to engage in pro-social and life-enhancing behavior. And one of those assets was, do you have an adult in your life that cares about you, that you know that they care about you, and that they can be a role model, or even if they're not necessarily a role model, you know, that has additional dimensions, but you know that there is an adult in your life that cares about you. And I think that sometimes we don't give enough credence to how are we interacting with the children in our lives. And I know I've been rambling for a while, but I'm just another quick example. After I went to multiple of these 40 asset presentations, I realized that, like, for example, when I'm at church, and there's lots of youth at church, I would think, yeah, I mean, my children's friends, close friends, sure, I'm interacting and caring about them and how are you doing. But to the other youth, I pass them in the hallway and maybe not even think about them. And I realized I really need to be more consciously expansive and caring about other children, just besides my own children and their close friends. So I think the notion of mothering, even if it's just a quick hello, a little smile, what are you up to? If we can expand our notion of mothering, I think that can be really, really useful to whatever corner of the world we find ourselves in.
I absolutely believe in the same thing, Robin. And we are living in a time where there's so much polarization, so much anger, so much divisiveness. And if we can come from the perspective of they're all our children, they're all our children, and we can open up our hearts and show to everybody else what true love and acceptance looks like, we can heal and get past all of this. And you know me enough to know that I always talk about our children. And sometimes people say, yes, what are you talking about? You don't have kids. I'm like, no, I haven't given birth, but they're all our children, right? I remember in high school in India, one of the books they had us read is All My Sons by Arthur Miller. It's a play. Arthur Miller was one of Marilyn Monroe's husbands, so very colorful personality. But that play stuck with me forever. It's a business book, but it is also a book about life. And it's about a male businessman. The play starts with a funeral. The father is beside himself and he's holding a gun and he's attempting suicide. And then the play goes to the backstory. He's a manufacturer. He was asked to build pots for a bomber. And he realized he had a quota to build, but his quota that he had manufactured came out defective. And he thought to himself and struggled with the decision, do I admit this is defective and remanufacture another batch and take the loss? Or do I say nothing and sell it and keep the profits? And he decided to sell it, keep the profits. And the justification he made is these are other people's sons who are going to war. There is no personal stake for me, so I shouldn't care. This is business. This is strictly business. I shouldn't get personally involved in a business decision. Because traditionally people say it's not personal, it's business, that same notion. But he's the only one who knows that as soon as he did that, his son got drafted and his son died flying one of those planes because of the defective part. And he is the only one who knows his son died because he didn't consider everybody's sons, that they're all my sons. And so that's the title of the play, All My Sons. And that I was reading it as a 16-year-old raising my siblings in a foreign country, having just fled a genocidal war. And my parents were held behind and all our assets were frozen. So I'm already in that trauma stage, trying to become the mother to siblings, one of whom is older than me. So it comes with its own pitfalls, right? You don't have any authority over siblings, and we're all teenagers. And at that stage in my life, that story stuck. Whether I'm making a business decision, whether I'm making a life decision, I look at it through the lens of that Arthur Miller play. If these were all my sons and daughters, what would I do? Therefore, what should I do?
Yeah. Wow, that is really, really powerful. I have not heard of that play, but I absolutely will look it up now. And what a powerful story that, yes, what impacts, what we're all connected in one way or another. And there are now lots of scientific studies that are showing that we are literally all connected in one way or another, and that what we do matters and what impacts other people matters. What a thought that was popping into my head as we look at, and we were talking about conflicts in the world, et cetera, is that there are multiple instances where it's been the women who have come forward and being able to broker a peace. What was coming to mind is in Ireland, between the between the Catholics and the Protestants, is that ultimately it was the mothers from both sides came out and said, enough, basta, enough, we're going to change this. And that they were able to lead. And I'm just wondering if in some of these other, conflicts around the world, that as the women, step forward and say, we must change this, that we'll be able to get some change. And here the thing is, though, oftentimes we think of things globally, which we absolutely need to and should. And do we also look around in our own neighborhood? Globally, think globally, act locally. I guess that's the phrase that I've heard. Think globally, act locally. And so what can we do today, right in my own neighborhood, that can help children and help women, help children?
That's brilliant. And we can only act locally, right? Because that's where we are physically present. that's where we can create a real life impact. And I really would like to take this moment and thank all the women in so many different facets of their life who bring that maternal instinct into play, whether it's at home, whether it's in the community, whether it's in the school, whether it's in the workplace, whether it's in society. Countless women play this role for no recognition, no reward, but because it is the right thing to do. And we would be remiss if we don't take this moment and honor them and be grateful for their presence, for their impact, and the unconditional way they show up to make this world a little better in so many little ways.
Absolutely. One of the things that popped into my head as you were talking is that we women, especially we mothers, really need to cut ourselves some slack. I hear so many women, and I was one of them, just really beating ourselves up all the time for our imperfections. Hey, well, we're human too. And granted, we do need to change. We do need to make amends. We need to become better people. But I hear so many women really, their self-talk is really destructive. And so it's, I would say engage in self-talk that is uplifting to yourself. If you wouldn't say it to your best friend or to your daughter, why are you saying it to yourself? And so I would just really encourage every mother and mothering person, mother figure, to just be kind and gentle to yourself. And that will help yourself get better faster than beating yourself up. So be kind and gentle and uplifting to yourself like you are to other people.
I love the notion of having grace for ourselves and others. And I want to make sure I put in a plug for the training you do. The Kitsugi method and approach of understanding our imperfections is what makes us beautiful. Every broken piece we have, and we have glued it together to put our life back together. That makes us uniquely us. And that gives us the ability and the opportunity to impact life in so many beautiful ways. And every woman, like every human, is perfectly imperfect for her purpose. And if we just had grace for ourselves as much as we have for others, we could make this a beautiful day, a beautiful celebration. And we can hold space for each other in women investing in women. Robin, you and I talk about how we can lift each other up. And let's honor one another. Let's take a moment, because we are mothers not just to our children and the young people in our lives. Whether we like it or not, we also continue to be mothers to our spouses. That's a given definition of our role, right? Our mothers-in-law pass on the responsibility of mothering their sons to us. And we continue.
Yeah, absolutely. That's very, very true. That the mothering isn't just to children. It can also be to spouses, to sisters, to friends, etc. And I love that you brought up the kintsugi, which is the Japanese art form of putting broken pottery back together with liquid gold or silver and using that to highlight the scars, the cracks, and it becomes part of the beauty. It's part of the Women Creating Well-Being series of workshops that I've created. And it's very true that if we can, kind of combining that with my prior comment about being gentle with ourselves, if we can see our lives, the cracks and all, as part of the beauty, and that we are a package deal. We are a package deal. We have the smooth edges and we have the rough edges. And hopefully, as those rough edges can get smoothed over with some gold and silver, then we can become even more useful and of beauty to the world. So what a wonderful way to greet Mother's Day coming up tomorrow.
Yes, thank you so much, Robin, for having this lovely conversation with me. And as you give roses to the mothers in your life, remember there are thorns, there are hard edges, there are soft petals, there is fragrance, there is beauty. And every woman embodies it, and proudly stand up and own it, because all of it together is what makes each of us unique. And let's celebrate us, let's honor us. And in the process, let's live a life that is deeply meaningful and embrace the notion that they're all our children and we are all somebody's child too.